Hey guys, it's Katie, and I'm here today to do a review on Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson. Now, before we launch into this review, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So, many of you guys know that Leonardo da Vinci is one of my all-time, if not my all-time, favorite historical figure. And this book just enhanced that love by like 10. But also, for those of you who don't know, I actually studied abroad in Italy a couple of years back, and I'd been there before with my family and everything. And because of all of that knowledge and that historical and artistic knowledge from studying abroad and talking to my mom and my dad about history and everything and traveling around and whatnot, I had, I think, a deeper and richer experience reading this book than I think a lot of people would. Not to say that you can't read it if you haven't done those things, but by going to the places and experiencing the things and studying the art and the architecture and the person himself before reading this would definitely, I think, help and enrich your experience. I don't read nonfiction very often because I find it very exhausting and it's like pulling teeth for me to get through a nonfiction, especially if I'm not interested or into the topic. But this is a book that I was very, very excited to read because I love the topic, I love the subject matter, and also I think reading biographies is different because you're reading about a person, and the person in essence is a character. And so I just definitely think that helped. This book spans Leonardo's entire life, from the time he was born all the way up to when he died, and talks a little bit about his legacy as the book is going on, but it kind of encapsulates it at the end of the book. I want to address some things that I've heard like in other reviews and things of that sort about people having issues with the way that this was written. So a lot of people's main criticism that I've seen in terms of reviews and things of this book is that they see it as a psychological kind of analysis of Leonardo himself. And I just want to take a second to address that and talk to you about something that I learned in undergrad. So for those of you who don't know, I was an ancient studies and medieval studies double major in undergrad, which is basically some weird hodgepodge combination of classics and history. And by classics I mean Latin, Greek, reading texts, translating things, and then history with a focus on the ancients and the medieval. But I also did quite a bit in Renaissance, especially during my time abroad. So I'm going to talk to you about one of my professors. He created a primary source document analysis. I think that's what he called it, and I actually was able to pull up an old email that he sent us. He gave us all these questions to kind of prompt what we should be looking for or thinking about as we're doing our analysis, and it's something that I think applies to most things that we do in our life. Not only does it apply to things like biographies and historical primary source documents and things, but I'm also using it quite a bit in my law school life and my legal analysis and things. But I really think you can use it across the board if you really, really, really want to. And so here is basically the breakdown, and I've altered it slightly to make it fit this review / discussion thing. The first question we should ask ourselves is, well, what is this passage about, or what is this book about? And this book is about Leonardo da Vinci's life, and there are specific aspects in each chapter that the author chose to focus on. So you could break it down by, you have this overarching umbrella being that it's all about Leonardo da Vinci, but then each chapter has specific things that it focuses on, whether it's his time in Florence, or his paintings, or specific paintings, or his foray into dissections and human body, or his architecture and his engineering adventures. I mean, this book has it all in it, and it's really, really well done. So, thinking about what this book is about, it's about Leonardo da Vinci, his life, his journey, and everything that we've seen is told through primary source documents, like his artwork and his journals. The primary research and the primary resources that Isaacson used while writing this book were Leonardo da Vinci's journals. Using these primary source documents, he created another secondary source for us to enjoy. And that actually brings me into the second question: what is this document and this work's purpose? For an example, what sort of document is it? This book is a secondary source because it's all about Leonardo da Vinci and kind of doing an analysis and a telling of the journey of creating all of the primary source documents that we have. Primary source documents being the paintings themselves or the journals and things like that. But he drew on a lot of other art historians and historians alike and contemporaries of the time in order to give us a full telling of Leonardo's life, his journey, and his purpose and everything that went along with it. And what is its agenda? The agenda of this book is to give us as full of a picture as we can of Leonardo da Vinci, the man, the painter, the engineer, the scientist, just everything that made up Leonardo da Vinci and his life and the people he was surrounded by. Its agenda is to tell us as much as it can about what man was all about, what his legacy was. Next is, who is the audience? Well, the audience is just the lay reader like you and me, but it could also be geared toward art historians and historians of the Renaissance, or people who study artwork alike. I mean, it's got a wide audience, but I really, really think, in my honest opinion, that it is geared toward people who have more of a history or an art history fascination, because this is full of historical and also art history references, and also art references that, if you weren't familiar with some of the terms, you might have to do some additional research yourself in order to fully understand. The experiences that I had when I was in Italy, I had the fortune of being able to study art history and art and learn some of and most of the terms and the historical events that were presented in this book. Next one is where things get a little bit trickier. Is this source reliable? I'm going to say that yes, it is a reliable source, because not only did Isaacson use Leonardo's journals, which were written by Leonardo himself, but he pulled on contemporaries of the time like Vasari, who was a biographer of many, many just different artists and people of that time. And he also pulled on other sources and source documents and art historians that have studied this man for their life work. So he just consulted many different sources, many different documents, and kind of came up with his own analysis based on what he found. And the next question is it biased, and if so, how? I really truly believe that all works are biased in some way, shape, or form, because it's, and in particular when it comes to this book, I'm saying it's biased because it's written by this author and it's based on his research and his experiences, while also pulling on other people's resources. So I mean, he's kind of just pulling all of these together and kind of creating his own interpretation on who Leonardo was and all of the sources that he used as research, and just kind of came up with his own interpretation and his own analysis of it. So I'd say, yes, it's biased, and he even kind of alludes to that at points in the book. He's like, this is my opinion, this is my take on this thing, my understanding of how this thing happened. And I mean, Leonardo da Vinci is an enigma. We will never fully know everything there is to know about him, and he, I think, wanted it to be that way, because we have pieces here and there, but we have all of these lacuna about who he was and ultimately what he was like and just everything. But it can be filled in by different source documents and different analyses and just looking at all of these different sources. But I really ultimately do think that this book itself is a biased document. Why is it useful for understanding the society? Well, let me tell you a thing, friend. This is just as much of a historical analysis as it is an analysis of the person, because looking at Leonardo's life and everything, we were also able to look at certain events and draw on certain things that were going on in his area of the world during the time that he was doing certain things, and why he was painting or experimenting with the people that he was. I mean, very, very heavy theme throughout the book was the idea of patrons and artists. Patrons wanted specific things painted. They would commission artists and architects and all of these people to do things that they wanted done. And Leonardo had many patrons, and he dabbled in many different areas, but he became an expert in many areas as well. And so I think it's useful for understanding society, because it's useful for understanding what was going on in the world and what was going on during the Renaissance and during Leonardo's lifetime, and in turn understanding societal life. I mean, Leonardo was a bastard. His father never legitimized him as his son, and there is some analysis as to why, but also just the idea of being a bastard during the Renaissance in Italy was not necessarily seen as a bad thing. So I mean, just understanding some of the social aspects that were explored in this book and just some of the things that were going on, it just really helps put into perspective some things that have changed or that we might know to be different now. There are times of history, and we just get a nice, I don't want to call it a snapshot because it's really not, it's covering quite an expansive time period. It's, I think, 60-70 years of history is encapsulated in this book, and we get to see different things that are going on, because while Leonardo started out in Florence, he also went to Milan and Rome and France, and just through all of those places that he went, we got to see a different snapshot of what was going on during that period and what the patrons were asking for and expecting for that moment in time. And so it's just so key to understanding society, but also understanding society through Leonardo's artwork and through his science and his architecture and just his sheer brilliance and his exploration and his enthusiastic, passionate learning curve and just learning experience and just curious mind. Like, he is the ultimate Ravenclaw. But it's definitely key to showing us what was going on in the society because of the historical aspects and everything that was going on. Basically, all of these questions are leading to one big thing. What information can it provide to the historian or the art historian or the reader? And how can, and by asking all these questions, it helps us fully understand the texts and the things that we were reading about. And I decided to kind of do my review this way with this set of questions and these mindset because of what I was taught in my history classes with this professor. I just really think it is the best way to think about nonfiction, and it's a way to think about it in a more engaging way. Because I mean, you know how I do my fantasy reviews. I usually just talk about the plot, the world building, the characters, and the writing. And you can't do that with every genre. I don't know if that helped understand, but basically this book was one of the most phenomenal renderings of Leonardo da Vinci and his life that I have come across in my many studies and my many adventures into his world. And actually, this is going to be the 500-year anniversary of Leonardo's death in 2019, and they are actually putting his journals on display, and they're just having this really vast celebration. I saw an article about it, and it just really made me excited because the journals that I was, hearing about and seeing pictures of from time to time in this book are going to be partially on display. I mean, some of them, because there are over 500 journals throughout the whole collection. It's just crazy to me. But I just really connect to this man. And actually, that brings me to something. As I was reading this, sometimes I couldn't help but think I was reading about myself. Because Leonardo was left-handed, incredibly curious, very self-learned, self-taught, self-driven. Just learning about his work ethic and what he did and how he experienced and explored things and the way he learned and everything. I was like, this is literally me all the time, because I am a very experiential learner. It's the best way to learn, in my honest opinion, when I can't verbalize or visualize things. I'm definitely not an auditory person at all. Experience is the way that I learn. Actually, when I was younger, I went to a non-traditional schooling system, and almost all of our work was done in a hands-on way. We did science experiments, we did dissections, we did math by using different shapes. So we had what was called bead bar layout, and different numbered beads would help you learn the math facts and kinds of things like that. And in essence, I was basically learning like Leonardo da Vinci was. I was doing it by exploring and by experiencing things and by doing it myself constantly over and over again. And I'm left-handed, so that was definitely really interesting because very exploratory. And as I said, he procrastinated a lot. He believed that, a work, if you were like frustrated or you wanted to get, make a work better, procrastinate about it. Sit and kind of meditate about it, or sit and do something else for a little while in order to kind of get your juices flowing. And I mean, I know some of us do that today. Like if we're, frustrated with writing or frustrated with doing a project that we're doing, we'll go and, read a chapter of a book and take our mind off of the thing that we've been thinking about for hours and just getting constantly frustrated with, going in circles on. And he definitely did that a lot as well. I don't know, just if you guys know anything about Leonardo da Vinci and you choose to pick this up, come talk to me about it, and then I will literally tell you every little aspect of myself that is like this man. But it was just such a captivating read, so well written, very engaging, pretty easy to read, but I would only read small chunks at a time because I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted to sit with the things that I was learning about. This isn't a book that you can just sit and binge read or read in a couple of days. I really suggest sitting and just immersing yourself into this man's life and this history. But yeah, I definitely thoroughly enjoyed it and would say it was probably one of my favorite books of the year. Yeah, if you guys have read this book, or if you are a fan of Leonardo da Vinci and want to talk about him, feel free to talk to me in the comments or come find me and message me on Twitter and we can scream together, because I just adore this man. And even more so now that I have finished this beautiful biography. And that's really all I've got otherwise, and you know the drill at this point, so just know that all of my social media links are down below, and I'll catch you later. Bye!